Welcome to HCA Talks Health. I'm Zena, and today with me is Sarah Walton. So, Sarah is a business coach and an expert when it comes to making sales. So, she's been featured on the Today Show and she often speaks at women conferences all across the globe. But today, Sarah is going to share with us how to overcome money mindsets and also how to make sales without being pushy or, even dreading it. So, a warm welcome to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me, Zena. I'm happy to be here.
Sarah, I want to start with your own story. So, how did
Mm.
you become interested in this specific topic?
Yeah, it is a story. I was raised incredibly poor, like really, really poor. And when I say poor, there were times there was, a half a loaf of bread that my mother had made from scratch and a jar of honey. The end. I mean, it was really like that. And when I was five, I was watching the Nutcracker on TV, and I remember saying to my mom, "Mom, I want to do that." I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was beautiful. And so we didn't really have money for dance lessons, obviously. So I learned how to dance by watching MTV, which
Yeah.
is now all about reality TV instead. At the time, it was like really fun videos. It was Paula Abdul, Janet Jackson, all these women who were like dancing like crazy. And I would mimic their dancing. And then it came time to try out for the high school dance team. And this was something I'd wanted forever. I grew up in a very small town. This was like the big end all be all was to be on this dance team. And it came time to try out, and I was in the basement practicing my Janet Jackson chair throwing and like all the things that were happening at the time to really get on this team. And I made the team, and I was so excited. And I lived in this tiny little community. People were bringing me flowers. They were like, "Congratulations." People really knew about this. And then I got the letter that talked about how much this was going to cost, like how much the costumes were, how much the jacket was, how much the shoes were. And Zena, I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments where you like watch, you almost like lift up and watch yourself go through something. And it was like, wow, she's having an experience right now. But like I felt my stomach drop through the floor, my hands got sweaty, my mouth got dry. And it was like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. Everybody knows I've made this team, and there's no way
Mm,
we can pay for this.
mm,
Um, and so what I did is I went and got a job at the mall. It was the 80s. So think about Stranger Things. That's what a mall, they don't exist anymore like that, but that's what it was like. And I sold tchotchkes from a little cart, and I made my first little paycheck. I was so excited because it was enough for the deposit. And I didn't have a bank account because I was just a teenager. So my mom took me to the grocery store to get this check cashed. And as we're walking into the grocery store, it's me and my younger half brother and my mom. My mom says, "Sarah, the strawberries are on sale. Can we get some?" And I'm like thinking of the costume, and I'm thinking of the strawberries. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Okay, we can do this. I said, yes, we can get the strawberries. So I go get my check cashed. So I have the cash in hand, and I go to like, the express checkout aisle to find my mom and my younger brother, and they're not there. And I'm looking up and down. I go up and down all the aisles, and I see them in line with a cart full of groceries. And it's a cart full of groceries I know my mom can't pay for. And I'm standing there and I'm looking in this cart, Zena, and there's like, breakfast cereal for my brother, some milk, his lunch meats, bread for his lunches, right? And the strawberries. And I'm like, oh my God, I can pay for something I've wanted my entire life, or I can take care of my family, but I
mm,
can't do both.
mm.
And cut two, I was the first woman in my family to go to college. And I have 65 cousins. So that's saying something, but I was the first woman to go to college. And when I decided to start working, I moved to New York City. And I'm making this huge salary. I have this amazing job. I am miserable. I am absolutely miserable. And I'm sitting in my beautiful glass office one day, like with the FICA tree and my team out the door. And I'm like, oh my God, the grocery store. And all of a sudden, I remember that day in the grocery store where I decided I couldn't take care of myself and my family. And
Mm.
so there I was, always sick. My stomach hurt all the time. I was super skinny, which isn't healthy. It wasn't like I was strong and I just couldn't eat, right? It was miserable. And all of a sudden I remember that day when I had decided I couldn't take care of myself and my family. And there was a 16-year-old girl running my life.
Mm.
And that was the day I got up and quit. And I realized I was not the only woman who didn't appreciate her relationship to money. I almost ignored it, right? But here it was driving everything I was doing. And so I decided to take everything I learned. I was always the only woman in the room. I was the only senior executive doing financial forecasting and planning stuff. And I was like, why do more people not? This is ridiculous. This is fourth grade math. Why are there not more women in this room with me? Um, so between that and that moment with my mom, which by the way, everyone's always like, what did you do? What did you buy? So I bought the groceries that day. And what happened was another woman in my neighborhood had heard what had happened, and she ended up buying my dance costumes for me, which was so incredible. And in
Fantastic.
2018, I was hosting a conference. I now live in New York, but I went back to Salt Lake City and hosted this conference. And a lot of people know this story. It's called My Grocery Store Story. And sometimes in business or in life, we share stories so often we forget they're real. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
know they're real, they happen, but it's almost like you get a little separated from it. And
Yeah.
at that conference, I got to bring the woman who bought my costumes up on the stage with me and thank her personally. And I said, this is what happens when women have more money. This
Oh,
is what we do with it. And had she not done that, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing
mm.
today. So it was a long story, but that's the truth about why I do what I do.
Wow. It's quite an inspirational story. And it's interesting how the narratives from the past can somehow inform the decisions that we make today, in business and the mindsets that we have when it comes to making money or not making money. So, what would you say if you think about money narratives? I think there's lots
Mm.
of interesting money narratives, and I don't know if is this more the case with women than men, do you
Mhm.
think?
I do. I still do. I think it's, what is the word? I want to say unfortunate, but that's not quite the word I want to use. It's really clear. And it's quite distasteful. But if we look at the patterns of humanity, right, women were passed from fathers to husbands, never to touch money, right? We weren't allowed to. And in the States, at least, women couldn't have their own credit cards till 1976, couldn't have their own mortgages until 1976. And you look at that, and there's like this undercurrent of, women can't handle money, right? Like there's like this weird negative thing. And somewhere I believe in the collective unconscious, we pick up that we're not good at it, which is completely incorrect. And my feeling is men have kind of had their turn at handling money. And there's been a lot of bombs dropped on a lot of children. And I think they've had their run. And I think if women had that amount of money, we would be dropping food, water, and medicine on other people's children.
Mm.
And I think it's really time for us to start to own how good we are at it, how effective we are with money. And there's a stat in the United States, at least, if you give a woman $10, $8 goes back into the community. If you give
Mhm.
a man $10, $2 goes back into the community. And I think that matters, right? I think we really care about where our money goes, who it's supporting, what story that's telling. And when it comes to these narratives, if someone's listening and they're like, I don't know what my narrative is around money, like I don't know what that is, I just want you to think about the way you talk to yourself when you look at your bank account, right? And another thing I invite people to do is if you use credit cards or your debit card, whatever, go back and look at your statement because money never lies. It will tell you what you value and it will tell you where you're sending energy out into the world. And we want to know what that is because that probably has a lot to do with your narrative.
Yeah. But it's quite interesting. So, at the Health Coaches Academy, we've got a little bit of a business module at the end. And what I often see is that the students, they're so happy to support someone for free while they're doing their case studies, when they're working with volunteers. But the moment they need to transition into making them paying clients or having to start to ask for money, they completely freak out. So it's quite
Yes.
a common phenomenon where
Yeah.
people tend to freak out the moment they have to ask for money. So do you think it's linked to this narrative of women can't handle money, or is there something else going on where
I think that's part of it.
yeah.
Yes. But along with the narrative that we're not really supposed to handle money is that our work isn't valued. And we
Mm.
pick up on that very young, right? So women, the majority of women do the invisible, unpaid work that
Mm.
makes the world work for everyone else. We get rewarded for that. Oh my God, you're so selfless. Oh my God, you're just amazing. Look at how much you do. And we do that. It's like women on women crime a little bit too, right? Because we really acknowledge each other, which is so heartfelt and good, but we're acknowledging each other for being selfless, like literally not having selves.
Mm.
Um, and I think that complicates this narrative that we're not good with money. We're not really supposed to be handling it. And, are you really a good person if you don't just do this for free?
Yeah.
There's like this weird undercurrent, right?
Yeah.
And I'll just to tell you a quick story about, gosh, I want to say it was 6, 7 years ago. I had a client I was working with. This woman is amazing, right? Psychiatrist. She decided to shift. She was doing these really hard work inside of court systems for children. And she was like, I cannot do this anymore. So we shifted her completely to being an expert on gratitude, which was amazing, and how it works in the brain and what happens. And she was doing everything for free, doing everything for free, and doing everything for free. And she said, I had somebody who came to see me and I just wanted to treat her for free. And I said, do your male colleagues have this problem? And she like visibly started. She was like, oh my God, no. And I was like, isn't that interesting? And she now charges $15,000 for speaking engagements, and all of her clients pay full price, and she's not gouging anybody.
Mhm.
People are happy to pay her that because of what it transforms for them.
Mhm.
And to people really going through that transition, it is real, Zena. And I so appreciate you asking this question because so many people go through it. You're fine taking a paycheck when someone else is paying you, when you spend the majority of your time on social media, you show up late, you take a little bit longer lunch, you don't really do the job, but you're fine doing that
Mm.
because it's not you who's being valued, right? You're supposed to show up and fill a seat. So you do, and you get a paycheck for that. But when it comes to something you've created from scratch, because we have been so conditioned to be of service for free and to remain invisible, it goes against that really internal wiring. And it takes a hot second for us to actually take a step back and deal with that.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite books to suggest people read about this is Untamed by Glennon Doyle, which is interesting. You're like, what? It just talks about how trained we are to remain invisible, and really working through that, because it doesn't have to stay this way. Obviously, that serves a whole bunch of other people and not us so much. So rewiring that piece, a lot of that can help us understand that when we charge for what we do, we actually help the other person. And really understanding that sales, the transaction, the financial transaction is it is literally only a transfer of enthusiasm. That's all it is. Like, you think about when you find that shirt and you're like, oh my God, I love that shirt, right? You're so excited to buy it and wear jewelry, perfume, makeup, flowers, your favorite like pick a thing. You are so excited. And what happened is somebody created that out of thin air and they were excited when they did that. And then you go and they transfer that enthusiasm to you. And the deal is, when we swap money for that, it enhances that enthusiasm and the joy and excitement. And when we're service-based, it can feel a little harder because you don't physically see something get handed over like a shirt or jewelry or right? Is that the understanding is that transfer of enthusiasm starts a physical, emotional, and mental transformation that can't happen when it's free. I don't know why. It just doesn't. And I think it has something to do with the fact that money is the most powerful tool we have access to today. We may not like that fact, but it's very difficult to argue it. And so when we decide to play with the most powerful tool we have access to, and we're transferring enthusiasm, something gets locked in that is so exciting for the person who's buying.
Mm.
And you never want to rob somebody of that experience of their own transformation.
Mm. It's exciting for the person buying, and it seems like they also add more value to something that they pay often good money for compared to
Yeah.
when it's free, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
like that, a transfer of enthusiasm. So if you were able to, wave a magic wand and let every woman out there achieve something when it comes to money and business, what would that be? What's your goal with the work that you're doing?
Oh, I love that. Well, it's funny because, it's actually really tied to yours. Isn't that interesting, right? People are always like, God, you talk so much about health. And I was like, well, your body is the source of your business. Like if you're not healthy and strong, it's really hard to run a business. But I think it is the lifting of all of the mental conditioning, right? So the idea that women should be smaller and skinnier and
Mhm.
and give so much that they're not healthy, right? We're not taking care of ourselves. And because money is the most powerful tool we have access to, I want it in the hands of more women because we do amazing things with it. So I just want us to kind of imagine a world where women have that level of power and we're not obsessed with our bodies and food. Like just,
Mm.
oh my God, could you imagine the brain power that would get unlocked and
Wow.
unleashed on the planet? What we could create, who we could help, what we would do for the environment, for children, for each other, for housing, pick a thing, clean water for all. Like, oh my God, if we weren't worrying about what we looked like, if we weren't worrying about other people's opinions, if we weren't worrying about what we were eating all day, and we weren't worried about making a boatload of money, the brain power that would be unleashed on this planet would be astounding. That is my end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the world will be a better place, definitely.
Could you imagine?
I
Oh my
know.
gosh. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
That's so true. Yes. So it's really about a bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's not just about women making more money, but if the money is in the right hands, it could make such a big difference. And just releasing that brain energy of doing everything for free, the fatigue and the all the energy that goes lost with all of that. Because I
Yeah.
think we really need to think about doing something sustainably. Yes, you want to run a business, you want to make money sustainably. And
Mhm.
I often share with the students, if we're not asking money for what we do, it's not really called a business, it's just busyness, right? So
Busyness is the key word. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
so figuring that out for yourself. So what I want to ask you is it possible necessarily for someone to absolutely do what they love, but also make money? So I've often heard that narrative where, your job is just, it's something where you make money and your hobby is something that you love. But do you find in your job, the work that you do, that it's possible to do both?
Of course. Yes, 110%. Now, I'm going to put a little caveat in here before I start yakking. And that is that there are things that should remain as hobbies because they
Yeah.
belong to you. Do you know what I mean? They're like your
Yeah.
little heart's secret work, and that should stay there for you, right? But if it's something you love so much you want to express with the world, look, I have to give an example everybody talks about right now in the world anyway, and that's Taylor Swift. Are you freaking kidding me? Are you freaking? The woman tells stories and she's like a bazillionaire, right?
Yeah.
Like, is she brilliant? Yeah. But she turned storytelling into a multi-billion dollar business, right? That is the epitome for me of proof that you can turn your talents, experience, and expertise into a business that doesn't matter what it is. The other example I love to give, so my son played soccer for all of his life. My little son, who's now in college, university, makes me want to cry, but whatever. Anyway, so we had like 9 million soccer jerseys, right, for him to have. And I was like, well, I don't want to donate these, and they shouldn't just sit in a closet. And I found this extraordinary woman here in the States. I had to ship all of the jerseys to her, and she made a quilt out of them. And now he's got them on his bed all the time. They're on display. They're being used. And that was her idea. Like that, her whole business is let me empty your closets and give you something useful.
Oh, wow.
And she makes a great living. Right. And then I also like to talk about Brené Brown. That woman made a career out of shame. What? Like,
Yes.
are you kidding me? Like, that's a thing. So, yes, is it possible? 100%. But to get it done is a little bit different. And my philosophy around business is that it is 80% mindset. If you have I'm making this happen attitude, not with blinders on, but with the mindset of anything that you touch, you are strategically turning it into a business. See Taylor Swift, right? Like that is a thing. That's a mindset of how do I share this and earn a living sharing it, that mindset. And then it's 20% strategy. And for the 20% strategy, it almost doesn't even matter what the strategy is, because if your head's not in the game, you could follow any strat. It's like dieting, right? Any diet will work. If your head's not in the game, it doesn't matter, right? It's the exact same philosophy. So if we look at the strategy, what I like to tell people is you need to understand 100% how much you need to be making every month. And not how much you need to be making just to cover your bills. I call it the freedom number. It's like the number where your shoulders drop and you feel like you can breathe, right? And we're not talking about millions and millions. We're talking about knowing what the number is that has you feel free,
Mhm.
free from freaking out, free from worrying. You're able to put money aside. You're able, here in the States, we always have to worry about taxes, right? So we're able to put money in the buckets we want it in with energy and lightness, right? You have to know what that number is. And from there, when you're looking at your hobby, your talents, your skills, you say, okay, if that's the number I need to reach, brain, help me out. What do I need to sell to hit that number?
Yeah.
And that's the strategy piece. But with a mindset of, I'm hitting that number,
Mhm.
your brain will start to work on that for you.
Mhm.
Right. So let's go back to the soccer jersey example, right? She started with, I'll make you a quilt for, I forget what it was, $500 or whatever. I was like, that's amazing. So we do that. And then she's like, actually, for people who have more than one kid, I have a subscription plan. Right. Which is, as a lot of people have 2, 3 children who are also inspired. She ended up doing my daughter's dance costumes and made that into, which was so, what the hell do you do with dance costumes from a 2-year-old? Right. Like, oh my God. Right. So they're in a quilt. It all got laid out for us and we use it all the time. So it's this idea that had she just done one-off quilts, which she can do, that's wonderful. And then she was like, okay, so how do I grow this? How do I anticipate my workload? How do I understand what's coming in? And so she started to think outside of that a little bit. And another great example of this I love to share with people, I think it's from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Was they were getting the comic books. They would buy comic books and they realized, okay, so we have these comic books, we want to make money, and they'd rent them out. Right. So instead of one person paying for one, they were able to buy one and rent it out over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And it's just sort of letting your brain work on that. And I'm a big believer in the subconscious brain that is looking all the time and calculating everything and knows everything. And then we don't pay attention to it so we can, exist because there's so much information coming in. But if you tell your brain, I want to make a living doing X, and this is how much I need to make, it will start to work on it for you. And then you have these beautiful, what I call shower moments, when you're in the shower and you're like, that is the best idea I've ever had, right? So you start having shower moments or driving moments or like middle of the night moments because your brain is actively working on it with you. And
Mm.
that is really what I tell people. This is, of course, it's possible. Look around at the world. Look at everything that you own in your home. Everything that you love around you didn't exist until someone created it out of thin air and then you bought it.
Mhm.
So there is no limit. This is why I say money is infinite. There's no limit to how much you can make,
Mm.
and there's no limit to how much you can create.
Mm.
We put those limitations on us because we have narratives like I shouldn't have money and I should just do things for free and I should just be of service. And so that can all sort of get in the way. But once you start playing in this field of this is how much I need to make to feel free, and this is what I want to sell doing that, you can start to adjust the pricing and the amount and your own energy to what's going to help you hit that number while being of service, helping other people, and doing what you love.
Mhm. But as you said, there often are quite a few barriers. And one is those narratives that we had, that we created many years ago, the value that we add to ourselves, but also just the idea of doing sales. Sometimes in some circles, sales is even seen as a bit of a dirty word, where there's quite a negative connotation to it. And I love the idea how you reframe it or rephrased it to it's a transfer of enthusiasm. But is there anything else that you can maybe share with us in terms of what can be done to overcome some of those mindsets? Or what is the first step that someone can take if they realize, okay, this is me. I've got some barriers. What can I do?
Yeah. There's so many different ways to go about it, depending on this is where know thyself is so important, but really depending on what really works for you. For some people, it's meditating and watching the money come in and flow towards them with such ease and happiness, right? Happiness from the people sending it in and happiness for them receiving it, and then sending it out to other people they want to send it to, right? Like understanding we're all just part of this flow and visualizing that for some people can be really helpful. For other people, it is literally writing down the beliefs that you start to hear, right? Literally just writing them down and then looking at whether or not they're real.
Mm.
And chances are you'll find a way to refute them quite quickly. And this isn't magical thinking or just say the affirmation. It's not like that. It's like you got to really sit down and look at it and ask yourself, is this real? And where did I learn this?
Mm.
Who taught me that? Why do I believe this is true when the evidence points the other way? What's happening? And actually sit with it. Don't run from it, but to actually sit with it and really get interested in how this came to be. And we know that those beliefs will affect your actions because beliefs always affect actions. And my favorite example of this is if, you see someone on the street begging for money and your belief is they're a drug addict and they're going to use it for drugs, you probably won't give them money. If your belief is it's not their fault they landed there and you'll do anything to help your fellow man, you'll give them money, right? And that's a direct correlation between beliefs and actions, right? So if we can get to these beliefs and really look at where they came from, how they started for you, are they real? Are they not real? And how do you know? Right. And really sitting with them, all of a sudden you'll start taking different action. You can't not start taking different action. And I think if you can sit with it and be honest with yourself, that will make a huge difference. And then the other book I really recommend to people, and it's not about sales, but it is about money. It's called The Illusion of Money by Kyle Cease. It's one of my favorite books, and I give it to people often. And just this idea that money is infinite, that like I just talked about. And if you believe that, obviously your actions are going to change. You're not going to be hoarding it and freaking out every time, right? Or be afraid to ask for it because it's infinite. It'll just keep flowing. But the other piece of that is self-trust. And so when I see someone really struggling with sales, and now you understand it's a transfer of enthusiasm, there's nothing sinister happening here. It's joyous and happy, is really understanding that you would fulfill on anything you promise when you are in an exchange of money. So if you say to somebody, this program, this idea, this PDF, this pattern, this jewelry, pick a thing, right? It will actually change your life this way. You're going to make sure that happens. That's self-trust. And again, that has been eroded for women from a very early age, right? We're not supposed to trust ourselves. We're supposed to trust the opinions of other people about us, not our own internal intuition and our own internal understanding of who we are on this planet and what we will do, the lengths we will go to make sure we are good on our word. And that when somebody pays us, we will make sure we will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that they are good and happy and they get what we promised. And that can also be part of the belief. And if someone's questioning, wait, what do you mean I'm only here because other people's opinions matter? It starts at that young age of like, oh, stop crying. Where's my pretty girl? Right. And the message you get is your emotions are bothering me. Please stop having them. Right. And we do. We stop having them. And then we turn to the invisible, unpaid work that makes the world work for everybody. And that's sort of how this is all intertwined. So the work is on, yes, asking for the sale, asking someone if they're ready to like pick up the amount of enthusiasm you have, which is a wonderful thing for them to do in their own lives. And that the transformation, whatever it is, starts the second they say yes for them, not for you, for them. That's a service. And so when we can flip sales into service, into enthusiasm, and we trust ourselves, we've done the work to heal the times that we haven't trusted ourselves and it didn't work. We all know those days, right? We're like, I knew it. I knew it. Why did I do that? Because you've been told not to listen to yourself. So turning that self-trust back on, between those three things, you really will be able to start selling without yuckiness, without used car salesman vibes, without like that yuckiness that we see almost daily. We get it in Instagram ads, right? We see it in infomercials. I think the average person sees about 3,000 marketing messages a day right now. It's so much we're just inundated with it. And you've probably been hurt by someone who sold you something you didn't need, or they didn't go to the ends of the earth to make sure it was fulfilled. And so the self-trust is going to come in that you won't become that person just because you're selling. And all of those things are inside that mindset shift that makes it easy to sell.
So there's lots of mindset shifts, lots of reframing, reframing sales to service. That's great. Yeah. So if someone feels like they need more support with this, how do you support people? What can you offer them?
Yeah, I love it. Well, first of all, for free, I have my freedom calculator. Remember we talked about the freedom number? You can go grab that and it will help you calculate your own freedom number. And then there's a whole bunch of marketing teaching behind that has some mindset work in it. So I always recommend people go grab that for free. It's just sarahwalton.com/freedom. Really easy, right? So go grab that. And how I help people, I have two ways right now. I have a handful of one-on-one clients. But right now where people are really flocking and growing and expanding, we had someone 7 times her revenue I was like, what just happened? It was so great. Is the Abundance Academy. And that is a year-long program with me as your one-on-one coach with a group of women who are running businesses, and learning how to overcome their own mindsets around abundance, around money, around sales. And it is a very special group of women, and we have so much fun. And it takes a full year. I think it really takes a year to fully reset all of that mindset, to practice, to come back and go, Sarah, it didn't work. Right. Or like, oh my God, I just made $10,000. Like whatever it is that you have someone by your side going, oh, that's amazing. Okay, next step is let's do this. Wait, but stop and celebrate first. All those things that we do together and the support inside that group, I think is really, really special.
Great. Sounds fantastic. And they can find everything on the website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Thank you. So, yes, thanks, Sarah. Is there anything maybe that you want to leave our listeners with? Any last thoughts or maybe a bit of a summary of what was said today before we end?
I think what I loved is you can absolutely do this. You can absolutely do this. I always make the joke, if Elon Musk can do this, are you kidding me? All of us can do this. Like we can do this. This is okay. You've got this. You just got to trust yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. I really think, and I know I've mentioned this earlier, but I do think that the world will be so much of a better place if people were able to do what they really love, what they care about, and if they can do it in a sustainable way, and that if they can relax about the financial side of things. But in order to do that, there's often very important work that needs to be done in terms of the narratives, the mindset, the way we see ourselves, business, sales, all of these things. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today. And just for the time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Sarah. If you have a passion for health and wellness, and you would like to make a difference in the lives of others and discover a new rewarding career in health and well-being coaching, visit www.healthcoachesacademy.com to find out more.